Sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. We have a liftoff. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Welcome back again to another episode of Cosplay Crafters Corner here on PCKC TV. I am Jelly Bean, and today we've got Calen Hoffman with Propcustomz. We're going to be talking quite a bit, but first we need to pay some of the bills and say, hey, thank you to U.S. Toy Magic and Costume Shop for bringing this show together and making sure we got everything. Take a look at Mel and that awesome little stick effects mask. Those guys are pure silicone. They're just absolutely great. But we want you to come into the store and get a 20% in-store discount with the code PCC Live 20, which is good through October 31st, 2020, because we're going to be announcing more and more cosplay contests that you can do at home with Planet Comicon here. Of course, we want to say thank you to our other sponsors for making sure that Planet Comicon happens year after year. We've got NFM, Boulevard Brewing Company, U.S. Army, KCWE, Geico, UMB Bank, Xfinity, 5 Hour Energy, T-Mobile, Kansas City Mavericks, Kansas City Live, and the great state of Oklahoma. Hey, we want to start saying hi to everyone on the chat. Of course, Dustin Evans Photography, sitting backstage, looking like a Wookiee. Thank you, sir, for being here once again and giving us your time, energy, and wisdom so that we can talk. And Calen, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing just absolutely fantastic. I'm excited to be talking to you today. We're going to be talking about quite a few of your creations there. That's quite a man. You're just coming out with hit after hit after hit. You've got a couple of video game stuff there, right? I see Moses' helmet from Borderlands. So what you got?
So this is actually a work in progress right here. I'll bring it out later so you guys can see it a little better. But this is Fish Stick from Fortnite. This is my Hiccup helmet from How to Train Your Dragon 2. This is my pirate beard and hair and nose from Sea of Thieves. And this is my Moe's helmet from Borderlands 3.
That's absolutely fantastic. So, well, riddle me this, because you've been doing this for a little bit. What got you into costuming? What was the bug that bit you?
Well, so I remember making things, like always wanting to make things ever since I was a little kid. I remember it specifically way back in 3rd grade. I used to take Elmer's glue and put it in my hands and rub it until little, like, I guess it was kind of like clay would fall out of my hands. I figured this out, and I would sculpt little characters and line them in my desk, and the next day they would be hardened and dry because it was just Elmer's glue. And not before long, I had my whole desk full of these little characters I made, and I would get yelled at by the teacher for not paying attention in class. But that was as far back as I can remember enjoying making things, and ever since then, it's just kind of snowballed into making costumes, props, replicas from movies, pop culture, you name it. If it's basically something I like, I will try to make it.
That's absolutely fantastic. You see, I was one of the kids who would put Elmer's glue on my hand and let it dry and then peel it off and eat it a little bit. I was a paste eater. No, that's not
Perfect.
true at all, but I thought it was funny. So you get a lot of your inspiration from video games. What games are you playing now?
Right now, I'm actually playing Diablo 3 on console because I've always been a Diablo fan ever since I was little. And my brother and friend started playing it on console, so I figured I'd give it a go on there. Other than that, some of my favorites are BioShock series, one of my tops. Gears of War, I loved those games. Sea of Thieves, I would have to say, is probably one of my top 3 games of all time, just because the style on it is really cool, which, again, I'll be showing that off a little bit here in a while. And then other games, I try a lot of different stuff. I've also been playing Ark a little bit lately. Haven't made anything from that game, but really enjoyable game.
Right on. What console are you on? Because if you say Xbox, we're gonna have to trade gamer tags later. Because I'm still playing in Diablo 3.
I'm on Xbox.
Are you on X?
I am. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Right on. Well, I'm Dr. Jellybean. We'll get all that taken care of later. We'll play some Diablo. We'll bring Ben Watkins into it. Oh man, how awesome would that be? That'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. He and I've been playing for a number of years now.
Diablo.
Yeah, Diablo 3. Yeah,
Oh,
we've been playing together for quite a while. It's one of the ways that we kind of just deal with stuff.
Yeah, well, there you go. What better way than slaying hundreds of demons?
Absolutely. So tell me a little bit. How long have you been working with EVA foam? Because I know you from Groot from years back, and that was possibly one of your breakout costume there. But I know you'd been doing work before that. Tell me more about that.
So the Groot you're referring to was actually 2014, which was I actually finished it the night before the movie came out in theaters, and I wore it to theaters the opening weekend of Guardians 1, which is a 2014. Before that, I believe my first EVA suit was Baird from Gears of War 3. I couldn't tell you the year, but it was quite a while ago. And that was the first full suit I made out of EVA foam, and when I kind of learned about it. And it was, of course, the Harbor Freight special that we all know about, the 4 mats at Harbor Freight for like $10. And I made it out of that. And then I've got into more like of the specialty foam. I know Stephen K. Smith makes really good foam and sells that. TNT Cosplay Supply as well. Makes some good foam. So like that stuff's really good because it's smooth on both sides. Yeah.
So Dustin's bringing up some pictures of Groot there. You've got a couple of different variations of Groot.
That's my second.
Is it the same costume? Okay. So and the second one, the second Groot you took out to the West Coast. Man, how difficult is it to walk in those stilts?
It's actually not that bad. How I did it was I basically made I bought some drywall stilts. I believe they were 24 inches. They stilted me either 18 or 24 inches. I don't recall. But I bought drywall stilts and I built a wood version of those stilts and then put my mannequin on top of that, which was that picture you just saw in my garage. And I built the suit around it to fit the stilts inside. And basically, once you kind of learn to walk on those drywall stilts, it's just a matter of walking on those drywall stilts while having tunnel vision and not being able to see anything around you.
So not only is it a matter of balance and strength, but then you also have limited vision. So it can be pretty scary. What were some of the things that you learned in making that suit?
I learned that tissue paper dipped in latex, or not tissue paper, paper towels rather, dipped in latex like to peel away from the foam, and you get to repair it after every time you wear it. So the second suit, I actually used latex dipped paper towels on the second one. The first one I used, what was it? It was tacky glue. Tacky glue dipped paper towels. But then on the second one, I used upholstery foam because that latex would soak into it, which was a lot better. So from the first to the second one, I learned that because on the first one, I used those pipe foam insulation tubes that you can get from a hardware store.
Sure.
And I just basically wrapped those around an undersuit and intertwined them and then covered them with the tacky glue dipped paper towels, which again, like I said, that kind of peeled away. So I wanted to improve upon that method. It was a really good method, and I believe I was the first one to kind of do that. And I've actually had hundreds of people kind of use that building method after to make their own Groot suit, which is really cool.
That's right on. You definitely are an innovator, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I do want to ask real quick, what is your dream cosplay? If money and time were no issue, what would you build?
I get this question a lot, and I give the same answer every single time. It's easy. Songbird from BioShock Infinite. He's one of my favorite characters as far as design goes, ever in any video game. He's really cool. He's like basically a mechanical bird, and it's a really bizarre design. And I just love the way they made that character. And in the game, he actually doesn't talk. He just makes like series of like mechanical squawks and noises, which is really cool. But he kind of acts like a jealous boyfriend in the movie, where he's like, or in the game, where he's very protective of one of the main characters, Elizabeth, because he was kind of like her guardian. And he was just like overall design and aesthetically, I just love the character a lot. But in the game, he's probably 25 feet tall. If I were to make it, I would make it a little more manageable. But I got as far as like I made some of the pieces of the costume. I just never went forward with it because it would take up a lot of room, and I quite frankly just don't have the room right now to store it.
Sure, absolutely. That's understandable. That's fantastic. Well, hey, I'm going to pay the bills here real quick. I want everyone to know at US Toy Costume and Magic, we are bringing in TNT cosplay foam. We should get our first shipment in here in the next couple weeks. And so when you're making those cosplays at home, we want you to use that PCC Live 20 code and get 20% off of your purchase of those. We've got thermoplastics. We have all sorts of adhesives. We even have like Crayola model magic and some things like that going on in the store. And of course, if you want to get some magic tricks to go along in with your cosplay, we're up for that. Hey, back to Calen now. Tell us a little bit about, you've got 4 different examples of things you've been working on. Are all those made out of EVA foam or what's going on?
Yeah, so the fish stick helmet is made out of EVA foam wrapped with fabric, and I'll kind of go into more of that process here in just a second. The Dragon Rider helmet, or the Hiccup helmet from How to Train Your Dragon, is the same process. It's EVA foam, except I skin it with leather. The Sea of Thieves beard and hair, and my little artificial nose there. This is actually just straight up EVA foam, no skinning or anything like that. And then the Moe's helmet is actually, I sculpted it, molded it, and cast it. So it's actually a resin copy of my original sculpture.
Okay, excellent. So let's start with fish stick, and you're saying it's a work in progress right there.
Yep.
And you use a process called skinning, where you I just noticed the baby Groot on your shirt. I couldn't see it with the helmets before.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah, this is a shirt I actually designed.
Okay, excellent.
So basically, right now he's kind of in pieces. If I take this off here, you can see this is an EVA foam hat, still in very raw form. Yep, still in very raw form and dusty because it's been in the garage while I'm working. And you notice this hot glue around the perimeter here. That's because I carved a little channel to put a wire. It's a 16 gauge galvanized steel wire that I embedded in the foam, and then I covered it with hot glue to keep it locked in there. But that enables me to bend it, and it will keep its shape. So that's kind of something I've used before, and it's a really good way to keep the shape if there's constant pressure on the foam. That way it doesn't just flop out and lose its shape.
Before you move away from the hat,
yeah,
you've got the dome in there. Did you heat up the hat and add a dome in there yourself, or how did you get that dome shape?
Yep, that's exactly what I did. So basically, when I first templated it, I didn't really have like a good surface to accurately make that round of a ball, because normally if you're making a ball, you would put tape over whatever your base is, and then cut that tape off into pieces, and then you would put that tape on the foam to make your templates, and you would dome that foam. So in this case, I actually had to like cut it like 3 or 4 times after I initially shaped it to get it to fit on top of the head just right. And I'm fairly pleased with how it came out. But yeah, you just take a heat gun to this EVA foam, heat it up till it's nice and soft. And I actually have a metal bowl that I got from IKEA that's on the end of a PVC pipe. And you take that foam and you basically press it over that bowl, and it will stretch the foam and make a dome shape out of it. And that's how I did that. And it's actually it's one big piece that I had cut, and I put a seam down the middle here, because this will all be covered up. I'm going to skin it with a really thin 1 millimeter foam. And then I had a seam here and here on each corner. And then I basically, once I had those seams cut to get those harder angles, I just put contact cement, barge contact cement on the edge of each piece and put them together. And then that's when I added the wire to bend the shape how I wanted it and for it to keep its shape.
Nice. Excellent.
And then this piece, this is the bandana. And you can see here that I did have a template for this one because I basically took one of those, I'm not sure what they're called, but it's basically a children's toy. It's basically a bouncy ball with like a rubber handle attached to it that you sit on and bounce on. Yep.
Sure, we do sell those at US Toy.
There you go. So I actually deflated that to the diameter I wanted for the overall helmet and did exactly what I was talking about earlier, where I put tape over the whole thing and then cut the tape off into pieces. And you can see those pieces right there. And before I cement them together, you dome them just like I spoke about. You dome them and then you cement them together. And then you dome them more to get the shape. Now, he doesn't have a completely round shape. If you look at the head from the side there, you can see that his forehead is kind of flat. So what I did is I actually just made the round ball and then just cut a slit in the foam and made a leaf cut in there to where when you put it back together, it pulls it in a little bit to create the forehead.
Okay, you said a leaf cut?
Yeah, like a leaf shape. So basically just like a rounded diamond.
Okay.
To where whenever you put it together, it will pull the center in more. I don't know if that makes any sense.
That does make a lot more sense.
Yeah, it's just kind of to keep it from being completely round, to give it that flat part right here. And then I took, once that was domed and shaped the way I wanted it, I took some batting, foam batting that you get, or not foam, just like batting that you use for sewing quilts. And I used some Super 77 spray adhesive and attached that that batting to the inside to smooth it out and get rid of any imperfections. And then I put fabric on top of that using the Super 77 again. So it's basically 2 layers. And that's what a process called skinning, I guess is what you could call it. I think that's what others call it as well. And I basically just skinned the foam with fabric, which has the added bonus of making it super strong. So like EVA foam, you could rip if you wanted to, but since this is fabric, that's not going to rip. And you can see the inside there. It's pretty messy, but it will eventually be cemented to this, so you will never see that.
Nice.
And then same process with the head. I did the same skinning process after I had the shape I want. The eyeball is actually one of those clear ornaments. It's like a plastic dome ornament that you would put decorations in and hang it on your tree, except instead I painted it white and put a pupil on it. And then the mouth is EVA foam piece as well. And I used pantyhose on the inside so that way people can't see in to see my eyes looking out. And that's where I look out of, is on the mouth.
How difficult is it to walk around with that bad boy on your head?
I haven't done it yet, so we'll find out. I think Fortnite's a pretty big with a younger audience. So I think if a Planet this August, I'm actually, if I can get it done, I'm going to wear it to Planet. So I think it'll be a big hit with the younger folks there. I think I'm going to get stopped quite a bit for pictures. Nice. But that's fish stick. And real quickly, since this is kind of the same process, you'll ignore my creepy duct tape armature here.
No, we're going to talk about that here in a second. But
so this is kind of the same process. I templated this all by hand by literally just pausing the second How to Train Your Dragons movie on the parts that showed the helmet and getting the shape just right. And it was very important to me to get the eyes to where they're not too open or not too closed, to get that perfect that perfect silhouette and that perfect area to look through. And if you can see here, you can see the stitching is all done by hand.
Wow.
And I used the same process where I templated out the foam, or I templated out the pieces rather, with poster board and made sure those all fit together well, cut it all out of foam, shaped it, and then skinned it with leather instead of fabric like the fish stick. The only difference is, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, when you skinned it with leather, did you use contact cement again, or some other adhesive?
So for the fish stick, I use Super 77 because that's plenty strong enough. But with leather, since if you put barge cement on a fabric, it's going to soak through and you're going to be able to see it. And it's not what you want.
Nice.
So since leather's thicker, I wanted the leather to really stick to it and never come up. So I used barge contact cement on the outside of the foam and on the inside of the leather. And then once it dried, I basically just stretched it over the foam. And it's never going to come apart, and leather is incredibly strong. So this helmet, I mean, I could throw this off the building and it's not going to hurt it. And then the spikes here were actually sculpted and then molded, and they're cast in a urethane resin, smooth cast 300. And the inside here has got metal flat bar stock. I don't know if you can see it very well. Metal flat bar stock bent into the shape of the helmet to keep the helmet to like hold its shape well. And then I just used screws with washers on the inside of that foam and screwed it through the metal into the horn so they don't come off.
Wow. Well, hey, I got a couple of questions, and then we'll go into another commercial real quick. First, let's address John Boone's question. Will you add any cooling system to that, like a fan or any kind of? It gets hot in EVA because there's not a whole lot of breathing room. Yeah,
EVA. If there's one thing it's wonderful at, it's lightweight, but it insulates really well, so it holds in the heat and the sweat. This one, there's not enough room. It's pretty tight on my head, but that's actually a really good idea for the fish stick costume. The only unfortunate thing is unless I vent it out of the mouth or through the neck, there won't be a place to vent it because there's no like holes that I'll be able to hide in the mask. But I did one of those in my group costume. I actually put a fan in the top, blowing outward, so it pulled the air through the jaw over my face, and then blew the air out of the top of the helmet, because the group costume was 7.5, 8 feet tall, so nobody could see that fan port at the top.
Yeah.
But that's a good idea. If you're doing EVA helmets and you've got room, put a fan, especially if you've got lenses, because lenses fog up really easily when you sweat, and it gets steamy in there. So yeah, that's a great idea. I don't know yet if I will for the fish stick, since it's so big. There's a lot of room. I don't know how hot it will get, and since the mouth hole doesn't have a lens on it, it's pantyhose, so it won't fog up. I don't know if I'll need it or not. But who knows? If I wear it some and decide that it does need a fan, it will be really easy to put one in there.
Okay, so do you take? I mean, the name for your cosplay is Propcustomz. Do you do custom props for other people? I know you've sold like little Groots in the past. Yeah. So I have basically how I do it is I've got things that I make and I take to conventions and sell my artwork. I've got those basic things, and everything I make I love. So if there's something I see that I love, I kind of make it, and I hope other people love it too. But also custom work, absolutely. I've done a lot of custom work over the years. Everything from Borderlands, I've done like pieces for folks of just concept art of like a character that they found online, of just a concept artwork that they wanted an actual tangible 3D version of that. So yeah, anything custom I do. It all just depends on budget, time frame, and the requirements of the client. Okay, right on. So if someone were to want something like the Hiccup helmet, what would that run them? Like, could you give us an approximate? It just depends on the piece. So I've actually had quite a few requests on this one. Now this was a one-off. So for like custom work always tends to cost more, because when you're doing a custom piece, all of the work that goes into it goes directly to the client. So whereas like something that I sculpt and mold, I can reproduce, I can make multiple copies from that original piece. Something like this was just like a one-off piece that I made for me.
It would be unlikely that I would sell my my own piece. But if some were to custom work, I never like to give quotes right off the bat because you know, it's tough to say. And but like something like this, if I were to go ahead and mold it and make multiple copies, it would be maybe a couple $100. I'd have to see how long each one took.
Okay, right on. Well, hey, I want to talk about that duct tape bust here in just a second. But first, I want to remind people here at U.S. Toy Magic and Costume Shop, you should come in and check out the selection of Rockstar wigs. They are flying off the shelf. People are absolutely loving these wigs. Last week, we had Pros and Cons Cosplay and Team Whatever Cosplay help us out talking about some wigs. So make sure to check out last week's video about the wigs. But come in and see the selection. They've got a wide variety of natural and unnatural fun colors. All the wigs are incredibly heavy because they've got lots of hair for you to be able to style in ways that you want. They are all front lace wigs. So definitely check out that product at US Magic and Costume Shop, and make sure to use the 20% discount PCC Live 20. And so that way we know you've been watching the show. So Calen, you got a duct tape dummy right there.
This one, yep.
Is
so
someone duct? Yeah, tell us the process of making that bad boy.
I didn't make it. So it was
okay.
It was a foam armature that I got. Oh, I taped the bottom too. It was basically an expanding foam armature that I bought from a company called Monster Makers, probably about 11 or 12 years ago. And over the years, it got kind of icky from like painting on it and just doing different things on it. And so I just duct taped over it to cover up like the sticky mess that it was. And I just use it to work on every once in a while because it's got a nice base, so it's sturdy.
Okay. I was hoping that was.
What's that?
Have you ever gone through that process of making a suit out of duct tape so you know?
I have.
Yeah.
I have a duct tape mannequin of my body, which if you just go to YouTube and type how to do that, you can learn that process. But it's basically in a nutshell, have a friend wrap yourself with duct tape, and then they cut it off of you, and then you stuff it with foam. And it makes like a 1-to-1 ratio of your body. Excellent.
Sounds good. Well, hey, we got a couple of other projects that you've been working on right there.
Yep.
Let's take a. You want to do Sea of Thieves first? Yeah, that's
sure.
A beautiful piece.
Yeah, I'm extremely pleased with how the paint job came out. I actually used an airbrush, which I don't use very often. So, well, actually, almost at all. So I was kind of learning, but I'm happy with how the paint came out on it. And this is all constructed and templated by me, EVA foam. And if you've played the game Sea of Thieves, you know that it's a very stylized game. You'll notice I have the ears here because my ears are not that big, and the nose. So Sea of Thieves is a very stylized game, and I absolutely love the way it looks. And I just wanted to make something from that game. And the nose actually will just attach to my nose. And I actually sculpted the nose in order to give me that really cool cartoony nose. And it's all, like I said, constructed out of EVA foam. I'll show you the bottom of the beard here. I don't know if you can see that very well.
Yeah,
and it all
different layers.
Oh yeah, it was lots of layers, and it was actually kind of tricky angles. But what I did is I actually I just basically started with the beard, and I just kind of made pieces out of poster board, held them up to my face to see if they fit or not, and if they did, I went ahead and made it out of foam, and then I just kind of took it piece by piece. On the bottom here, I made a beard like the I guess I would call the base of the beard. That was smooth, and I just glued those pieces that I cut individually on there, and I just went through and did each one, and they got it pretty close to what it looks like in the game. And the hair was kind of done the same way. If you notice, he's got that really nice part. Those were some pretty tricky angles to work out, but I like the way it came out. And like I said, I've got the ears which I actually made out of MDF, which is like a wood composite material, and then I basically carved it with a Dremel to get the shape I wanted. Which, by the way, Dremel, I'm sure all you crafters know exactly what this is, but if you don't, it is a rotary tool, and it's one of the best tools that I could ever ask for. People ask me, what one tool would you take? And this is it. I use this thing for literally every project I make, and they make all kinds of different attachments for the top, cut off wheels, grinding discs, sanding discs, you name it, they make it. And it's wonderful. It's got different speeds, and it's just great for a lot of things. Carving the foam down.
Don't put that away so quickly. Let's talk a little bit about a rotary tool and why you would choose to use that as opposed to going in for straight sandpaper. And how do you choose? Like, there are hundreds of different bits that you can put on the end of a rotary tool. How do you choose which one to use?
Honestly, it kind of just depends on what I'm trying to do. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll take a test piece of foam and I'll see how the bit interacts with the foam. Because if you're using like, for example, if you're using like a 120 grit sanding drum on there, that will take off material pretty quickly, but it'll leave it fairly rough, which is more difficult to cover up that rough surface later. But if you use like a grinding stone, for example, that will leave a little bit of a smoother finish on the foam after you Dremel it. And a trick I learned is keep your old sanding drums, because if you get one that's nice and worn out, that'll give you a smoother finish. It won't take away material as quickly, but it will leave you a smoother finish whenever you're done carving it down. And cutoff wheels, I mean, those are great for doing finer, deep lines. It kind of just depends on what you need to do, because like you said, there's hundreds of bits you can get. That's why they're so versatile. And there's even an extension thing you can get where you attach it to this, and it's basically like a snake, and you can have like a smaller handheld piece, and you can leave this on the desk or wherever, and you can get into tighter spaces with that smaller bit. And there's actually a 90-degree attachment as well, where you attach it to it, and then it basically has a crossbar, and then the piece, the bit spins this way as opposed to this way. So if you have some more weird angles to get to, you can put that on there and get different angles with it, and they're just extremely versatile.
Okay. Now, have you found when you started using it, did you find that you just kind of ate right through the foam quicker than you thought you would? Or what's the best way to practice so you don't go rip up a bunch of foam accidentally? Yeah,
definitely. So I would, I've been doing it so long now. When you first kind of begin, you need to get a feel for it. But I've been doing it so much that I've got a pretty good hand, like on how much pressure I need to use. The speed matters a lot. The faster you go, the more it's going to take off more quickly. So that kind of just depends on that's a skill that you kind of learn through doing it. And I would always advise, like you said, get a practice piece, see how it's going to operate on the foam. Now, if you go, the Dremel spins this way, so if you go this way on the foam, it's going to take off less. Now, if you try to pull towards you, since you're going the opposite direction of what it's spinning, it's going to eat into the foam more. Which, if you have control of the foam, you can get nice and deep really quickly. But if you don't have like practice like with that control of the tool, definitely try it, like I said, on a separate piece. That way you don't ruin the piece that you've worked on.
Okay, excellent. Sounds good. Well, thank you for that quick tutorial on rotary tools. That's a big deal for a lot of cosplayers, because you hear all the tools, but if you don't get experience with them or don't hear about other people's experiences with them, you don't get too very far. Hey, I wanted to go back and talk about the helmet and actually probably talk about the Sea of Thieves a little bit. How do you choose how big of a piece of foam to buy? Because we're going to be selling 4mm, 6, 8, and 12mm pieces at US Toy. How do I know what to sell to a person and what they really need?
Well, again, that's all dependent upon the project that you are doing. So, for example, on these on the Sea of Thieves, that's a good question, because on this piece I used a lot of different thicknesses. So for the pieces of hair, like let's find one here. For the pieces of hair, like back here, I used, like, this is I believe 10 millimeter, 8 or 10 millimeter. I don't recall exactly, but it's nice and thick because Sea of Thieves kind of has that like thick, chunky look. So I wanted to achieve that with, like, you know, the thicker foam. But whereas like pieces that you can't see as much, that you don't want to have that much volume to the foam, so like where it might be tight against your skin, you may need it to be thinner. For example, I can get that off there. The top of the beard here. So I knew that this would be tucking into the headband. So I didn't want to have that super thick foam there. So I just got some, I believe this is 4 millimeter or 6. I got some thinner foam there that would tuck up into that without taking up too much space. Because if it takes up too much space, then it's going to push the headband out and it's going to make the overall piece look a little too big. So it kind of just depends on what piece you're making. That's something you'll need to think about whenever you're deciding a piece to make, or like deciding what thickness to use. If you want it to look nice and thick and you've got some extra room, by all means go 8 or 10 millimeter foam. But if it's something that's going to be close to your body and you need it to look more streamlined and like less bulky, go with something thinner. It kind of just depends. I think there's 3 or 4 different thicknesses of foam in this piece entirely. So it's like it's a complete mixture to achieve different looks. The headband, for example, was really thick because I needed it to stick out, and I rounded off the corners here, which you can see. It's got the little tie back there and the sweat stains on the bottom of it. Now see, I needed to round it, and I needed it to have a good amount, like a good thickness, so I could Dremel in this recessed bit to make it look like folds in the cloth. You can see some different thicknesses in the hair there.
We're going to need you to come on and just do a Dremel demonstration at some point. But John Boone has a question for us. Did you airbrush any on the Sea of Thieves, or is it 100% foam color?
Yeah, so the Sea of Thieves helmet, I'm not going to worry about it. So the hair and the beard is that's actually pretty much all I painted it with was airbrush. Which I was saying, I haven't really used an airbrush before now. I know they're great, and I have one. I just haven't got around to it. But Sea of Thieves has kind of that smooth look, and they have that different color, like slightly different variations in color and tones from piece to piece, or like, you know, just like shading. So this is actually all painted with airbrush. And what I forget the brand of airbrush I have. It's just a cheap one, I believe, since I don't use it very often. But what I did is I got they're called Roland Dowley, I believe, or something like that. They're inks, acrylic inks that they use, and you can get them on Amazon. And what you do is you water those down with 99% alcohol. Mix the color you want. I've got like a little mixer here. I can go grab one of the inks here in just a second. But you water that ink down, and it that way it's nice and thin, and it runs through your airbrush. And I just airbrush the colors on, added a little black to it if I needed to make it darker for the different hue variations. And then I just was kind of practicing on this piece, and this was like my first airbrushed piece, really. And like I said, I'm really happy with how it came out.
Nice. Bruce Holt gave us a little bit of a demonstration with airbrush a couple of weeks ago, but you know, you're fresh. This is your first attempt using it. What would you say the major lessons to learn about using an airbrush starting off are?
If it's something you want to get into, if airbrushing, and again, they're great tools, and I want to get more into it. I just have it at this point, or up to this point, yeah. But what I learned from it is, if that's something you want to dive into, go ahead and get a good one. I know Badger makes some great ones. Pache makes some great ones. Go ahead and get you a good airbrush, because, like I said, I had a cheap one, and it would clog all the time. So just get good equipment to, if it's something you're going to use a lot, go ahead and buy a good one once, as opposed to a bad one several times. That was the biggest thing, I would say. And let me go grab one of those inks, and I'll show you the inks.
Sure. Well, while he's working on that, I might as well go ahead and talk about airbrushes that we've got available at US Toy. We do sell the Iwata, and they are branded as Pro Air brand airbrushes, and we sell a wide variety of Pro Air makeup. And so if you want to get into airbrushing, we've got some great people, especially, Rod Zirkle, Calen Hoffman. Those are some folks we've got right in the Kansas City area that can teach you a lot about airbrush skills and using it to improve your game. Hopefully when things get to be a little closer where we can start having people together in the store, we can start doing some master classes and get those folks come in to show off some of those skills once again. We look forward to being able to see everyone when things get safe. So yeah, thank you. With Pro Air is just a fantastic brand to learn airbrushing skills with, and they've got the Pro Air University that they've been broadcasting all spring, trying to help folks get used to it. So do we have Calen back? Yeah, there you go. Okay, yes. Let's see those inks.
Okay, so Dollar Rowney FW inks, and you can get those. I don't know if it's focusing. FW acrylic inks. You can get them on Amazon, and since I'm lazy, I bought this little tool, and it's basically just a little mixer, and you flip it on, and it spins really fast, and it's good for mixing those thin paints. It's wonderful for that.
Okay.
And then, yeah, you just mix it in a little cup, pour it in your airbrush, and spray it out. And just like practice, same thing with the foam, practice on like a spare piece. That way, you don't go painting and messing up a piece that you've spent a lot of time on. And I actually, so the nose piece of this one was actually, what I did is I actually, I sculpted it, and because I kind of put the clay on my nose and shaped it to fit my nose. That way it fits on there. And then I basically sculpted it and molded it. And then the mustache is just EVA foam as well, so it's flexible.
So what's the material that you ended up after making the mold? What material did you make the nose out of?
Same thing as that I used for the horns on the Hiccup helmet, the Smoothcast 300.
Okay, right on. Excellent. Well, hey, we're at 43 minutes, so it's a good time to talk about Moe's and my favorite video game series, Borderlands. So Moe's helmet right there, man. Nice choice.
Thank you. Yeah, before the game came out, I wanted, I don't know how familiar you guys are with Borderlands, but before the game came out, I was totally sold on the Beastmaster until I kind of looked into Moe's a little more, and I just thought she was super cool, how she had her mech, and I loved her helmet. So this was 100% hand sculpted by me, using Chavant sculpting clay, and painted to look like the cell shading that you see in the game.
Okay, how did you choose the clay to use, as opposed to doing an EVA, or what was some of the thought process behind that?
So the main reason was that I wanted it to be, I wanted to make a couple if I wanted to, and also I wanted it to feel substantial. So like EVA is great because it's lightweight, but sometimes, at least for me, I want to have something heavy. I want to have something like something that feels real. So with this, I wanted it to be like, a decently weighted piece. And it's just, sometimes it can be hard to achieve like a really smooth look on EVA foam. So for this, I just wanted to do that to where I could get those details just perfect, and I could spend all the time I wanted to them on the clay. And then once I was happy, I went ahead and molded it and cast it.
Okay.
And the antenna comes off for whenever you're packing it.
Nice. So you designed this thing out of clay, and then how'd you build a mold for it? Because that's a pretty big piece to mold.
Yeah. So molds are a whole other can of worms for like for crafting and doing that kind of stuff. Basically, what you do is you get. I use a Smooth On. It's a company that makes. I'm sure most of you crafters know about it. It's a company that makes silicones, resins, epoxies, all sorts of stuff for crafting and making things like this. It's a great company. I basically built a retaining wall around the helmet and then brushed all my silicone over my sculpture. And silicone is basically a rubber that when you mix it together, it hardens or it turns into like a hard rubber after maybe a few hours. And I brushed it over the whole surface. Once that got about 80% cured, I brushed another layer and then another layer and then another layer to where I had about, you want to get about 3/8 to about a 1/2 inch thick for my molds is what I like to go. And then once that's like all on there and you got a nice thickness, what you do is you let it cure and you create what's called a shell or a mother mold. And what that is basically, so the silicone, like I said, is rubber. So if you peeled that silicone off your sculpture, you would just have like a floppy piece of rubber and you wouldn't really be able to do anything with it. So before you peel that off the sculpture initially, what you want to do is you want to take your shell. I use a product called Freeform Air, also through Smooth On. It's like a really lightweight way to do that. And it's a 2-part kind of like putty. And you mix it together, you like knead it together, and it's like a putty clay. And you basically just make a shell, again, about a 1/2 inch thick all the way around, make a shell around the whole thing, and then that hardens. And so what you have then is a hard shell around the rubber to prevent the rubber from moving and flexing whenever you're trying to work with it. So after that cures, you would peel the hard shell off, have your hard shell there, take your rubber off, put the rubber into the mold like the same way you create registration keys when you're doing the silicone. That way it sits into the shell whenever you want to put it back in there. So basically the way a key goes into a lock, how they have the different slots so it goes in the correct way, same thing. You want it to go back in the correct way. So you put that rubber in the shell and then you cast inside that mold and it holds its shape.
Nice. Fantastic. And then, so you started off with a clay to mold it, and then what product did you end up? Is that the same Smooth On 300 that you used to make it?
Yep.
To give it away?
Same stuff. 300 is basically like sort of the jack of all trades of resin. It's good for a lot of things. It's easy. You can even get it on Amazon. We have a local supplier here or distributor here in Kansas City, actually a couple of them, I believe, that you can get it from. You can also use, because when you cast from this, it's called roto casting, and that's basically you pour the resin in. Resin is like a 2-part liquid that you mix together and you pour it in your mold. And then when you roto cast it, that means you like slosh it around in the mold to create a coating instead of like pouring it solid to where it's just all, it's like one big puddle that hardens. Like some pieces are solid, like the horns here. Those were I just filled the mold up with the resin and it's a solid piece. Well, this, you don't want it to be solid because you want to wear it. So it needs to be a shell. So you do that, you swish it around there till you get a layer built up on the entire surface. Then you let that cure again to about 80%. And then you put another batch in, swirl it around, roto cast it, rotation cast. Swirled around until that coats it, and I think I did about 4 or 5 coatings on this, so it's about a 1/4 inch thick or so.
Nice. Yeah, you talked about a couple of different distributors. Dustin's put up the ones that are there in Kansas City. Blick Art has some. the specialty art store. But when we go, especially to do our classes at the store, we go over to Castech and say hi to Lisa, and she's just
Yep,
been
Lisa.
fantastic. So
Yeah.
Lisa's a great supporter of what we're doing in the cosplay community. So definitely check in with her for a lot of your Castech needs, and she's got a lot of smooth on product just in stock already. So she's fantastic there. She's by far got the widest selection in town. So cool.
That's actually where I go, is Castech.
Excellent. Fantastic. Well, okay, riddle me this, Batman. If you were going to, I'm sure this is another one of those very generic questions. Someone wants to get into costuming and cosplay. Where do you send them to start? Where do you think people should start their design at?
YouTube. YouTube is a wonderful tool we have this day and age. So you can learn everything from building costumes to making a deck to whatever you want to learn. You can learn it on YouTube. It's a great source to go through. I'm one of those people that I like to learn about something, before I kind of jump in. Sometimes I like to jump in, but it kind of just depends. I like to learn about something about what I'm doing before I do it. And then EVA foam is a great place to start. It's super cheap and very easy to work with for beginners all the way up to experts. You only need like bare minimum tools, like I said, the Dremel, and you can get those from like $30 all the way up to $100 for the higher end ones, or any other brand of rotary tools that you like. Bandsaw is great for cutting the foam. I use one of those personally, but I know a lot of folks just use a box cutter, which I have one of those. Nice sturdy box cutter is really good for cutting the foam. Wonderful tool as well. And then some curved tip. I don't know if you can see the tip on those. It's a curved tip scissors. Those are great for trimming what's called like flashing or burring on your edges. It's really good for trimming those up and getting rid of like unwanted like pieces or just like extra crumbs on your clay. What
does that process look like? We got just a couple of minutes. If you could show us, do you have a spare piece of foam you could show us how that is done real quick? Because that's something I'm unfamiliar with.
I don't have any foam, but basically what you can do is you can Dremel. Suppose you have like two pieces that you're marrying together with foam, for example. Let's use this for an example right here. So like these two pieces that are butting up to each other, but this one's hanging out over this piece to give it a layered look. That's actually let's see, this is one piece, but up here you notice it splits. So sometimes when you're doing that, if you can't get a Dremel in there, some curved tip scissors, you can get in there and you can kind of trim the edges. Because sometimes when you cut it with a bandsaw or a blade, it'll leave a really crisp, hard edge on there. And if that's not something you want, you go in with the scissors and just kind of cut the corner off just a little bit to give it like a more of a rounded edge.
Okay, right on. Very groovy. Thank you for that. Well, hey, we're sitting here at the 55-minute mark, so I want to say thank you so much, Calen, for giving us your wisdom. Everyone, make sure to go check out the Propcustomz pages, social media, and everything else. And if you've got some questions about a custom that you'd like Calen to make for you, he is available there at the propcustomz@gmail.com. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. Well, gang, thanks for watching the show. Let's go ahead and thank our sponsors once again. And then we've got NFM, Boulevard, U.S. Army, KCWE, Geico, UMB Bank, Xfinity, 5 Hour Energy, T-Mobile, Kansas City Mavericks, Kansas City Live, and the great state of Oklahoma. Hey, Dustin, who do we have coming up on Tuesday for the Talking Comics with Chris Jackson and Will Bender up? We've got Freddie Williams II. Oh my gosh, that's going to be absolutely fantastic. So yeah, make sure to check in that show. Next week, I think we're back with Pros and Cons Cosplay. We're going to be with Tamara, Tamara that rhymes with a camera, and we're going to be talking about. Oh no, we're with HDC Fabrication with John Harrison. He's going to be one of the other judges. We're going to be nerding out a lot about the Mandalorian next week. We're going to be talking Baby Yoda. We're going to be talking Mandalorian and Star Wars builds. And so I am really looking forward to that with HDC Fabrication. So John Boone saying, "Help me, Bean. You're my only hope." Do we sell barge cement? We do not sell barge cement. However, you can get it at just about any hardware store, any Ace Hardware, Lowe's, Home Depot of your choosing is where you can get barge cement. I am hoping that we can get some more adhesives, but for each of those, you have to go through that. Tim Harrison, thank you so much, Jim. HDC is Tim Harrison is next week, and like I said, I am looking forward to a whole lot of Star Wars talk with him. Calen, thank you so much about the talk with video games. I love all the work and everything that you're doing. Such a talented artist.
Thank you.
And I wish you lots of great success. Hey, everyone, thank you. Make sure to keep tuning in to PCKC TV. We should be announcing another cosplay contest here in this next week, and we'd love to see it. And we're going to be just absolutely fantastic to see you. Come on back and see us next Tuesday night for the Talking Comics. We'll see you all later. Bye.
Mission sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. We have a liftoff. Liftoff on Apollo 11.